It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Hello there. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. How are you? Thank you for joining us. We've got Ron Galella here today. Ron is probably the most famous, if not infamous, paparazzo in America. He has been taking pictures for over 5 decades, and he has written his 20th book called Shooting Stars, which is coming out at the end of the year. He's been dubbed the paparazzo extraordinaire by Newsweek magazine and has many, many great stories of photographing basically anyone who was anyone in the entertainment industry from the 1960s through the 1990s, 2000s. He's still working after 5 decades. Most notably, he photographed Jackie Kennedy Onassis on many occasions and wound up in court with her twice, I believe, as he tells us. He also got his jaw broken and some teeth knocked out by Marlon Brando and was roughed up by Richard Burton's bodyguards. All sorts of great stories, which he will tell us during the interview. I have one correction to something I said during the interview. I originally was going to just edit it out, but I was half right, so I thought I would just leave it in and then make the correction at the beginning. When he was telling us the story of his encounter with Marlon Brando and Dick Cavett, I mentioned that I believed that they actually talked about it on the episode and mentioned him by name. That wasn't true because at the time that they taped the interview, it was before the event happened. The event happened later that evening when Ron and Dick Cavett and Marlon Brando all met in Chinatown in New York. Where it was actually mentioned was years later, Dick Cavett did a series of looking back videos where he looked back on his more notable shows and interviews and guests that he interviewed on his show during the 70s. And when he was talking about the Marlon Brando interview, that's when he mentioned what had happened after the taping of that show and their encounter with Ron. So it's available on YouTube if you want to look at it. And Dick tells the story pretty much exactly the way Ron told it. So the old saying of there's 2 sides to every story, well, this story was told by 2 different people exactly the same way, so I have to believe that's exactly how it happened. After the interview with Ron, we've got some music to play. We've got 3 tracks to play, 2 old favorites and a new one from Music X-Ray submissions. Thank you very much to everybody who has been submitting on Music X-Ray. We are getting lots of great music, and I'm happy to play it. The first track is My Destination by Kyoto Kandy, followed by Pesticide by Lakotah, Lakotah, and then Safely Back Home by Crosshair Kid. Before we get to all of that, if you're interested in being a sponsor on the Douglas Coleman Show, please check out our packages on Patreon. We have some very reasonable packages that are actually 50% off at this point through the holidays and probably through the beginning of the first of the year. Go to patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. Or if you just prefer to make a one-time donation to help us continue to bring you quality entertainment as we have for the past 3.5 years, you can check out our GoFundMe page at GoFundMe.com and just search Douglas Coleman Show, and we come right up. Please give generously as it helps us to continue to produce quality entertainment for your listening pleasure. So with all of that, we will be right back with Ron Galella.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps, record producer. This is my story about Elton John, working with him in those early years, going back to 1967 at Dick James, all the amazing tours, those first recordings, going through to Rocket Records, and it's an amazing story about his incredible rise to stardom and my part in that. So look forward to taking you on that journey. So here we go. Yeah, and to order this great audio CD, please just email me at stuartepps@talk21.com. That's Stuart, Stuart, Epps, EPPS, at talk, TALK, 21 in figures.com. Stuart Epps at talk21.com. Email me and I'll give you all the details for buying this brilliant audio disc. Thank you, bye.
Tired of living in a culture of lies, fake news, and alternative facts? The Pro-Truth Pledge reverses the tide of lies by calling on politicians, and everyone else, to commit to truth-oriented behaviors. The pledge asks signees to commit to 12 behaviors that research in behavioral science shows lead to truthfulness, such as clarifying one's opinions and the facts, citing one's sources, and celebrating people who update their beliefs toward the truth. Private citizens who sign the pledge get the benefit of contributing to a more truth-oriented society. Public figures get more substantive rewards for signing the pledge in the form of positive media and public recognition. The pledge crowdsources the truth by asking volunteers to evaluate the statements of public figures who sign the pledge. Take the pledge, demand that your elected representatives do so, and encourage your friends to take it at protruthpledge.org.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Ron Galella. Hi, Ron. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. This is Ron Galella from New Jersey, live.
Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You have an amazing body of work. I was looking over what your people had sent, and I saw the photographs of your book covers. The book that you're promoting right now is your 20th book. Is that correct?
That's correct. 20th book.
That is amazing. And the pictures that I saw were absolutely beautiful, and certainly people that I recognized. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. Before we get to your books, however, if you could just give us your quick backstory, how you got started in all of this and what you've been doing.
Yes.
And then then what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I just want to hit on a couple of your past books that look really fascinating for me. And then we'll talk about your new one.
Sure. Shooting Stars. It's over 400 pictures of mine. Iconic stuff.
So how did you get started in all of this?
Well, I was a ceramic artist before in 1950, and the war broke out in Korea, and I was going to be drafted in the Army. So I said, I don't want to go in the Army. I want to learn a career, and I joined the Air Force for 4 years. And that's how I got my start in the Air Force. If it wasn't for the Air Force, I would never be a photographer. I qualified to be a photographer, and I was never doing photography before. And I went to Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado for 5 months and learned photo school there. And I was a photographer in the Air Force. That's how I got started.
So were you taking war pictures at that point?
Well, no, I never went to war. I was stationed in the United States all the 4 years that I was, mostly after Colorado, I went to Florida, Orlando Air Force Base. I spent over 3 years there.
What kind of pictures were you taking then?
Well, in the Air Force, I took many kinds of pictures. One, passport pictures, all kinds of accidents, whether they any kind of vehicle or Air Force planes crashing. I took pictures of every parts of the accident, and also sometimes there was snakes in Florida, and there was a snake man holding a snake, and for the base newspaper, I photographed pictures.
Okay, so then you did that, and then after the Air Force, what did you do after that?
Well, under the GI Bill, I went to the Art Center College of Design for 4 years, and I got a Bachelor of Arts degree in photojournalism. And that's where I got my start, when I was curious about celebrities, how beautiful they are in person. And so I crashed premieres like Guys and Dolls, Sincerely Yours, and I got pictures of Frank Sinatra, William Holden, or many other stars at these events. And that's where I got my taste of glamour, and I was hooked on it. I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to specialize in photographing celebrities.
So you just basically turned up at the red carpet?
Yes. I put on my tuxedo and cameras, and I was not invited, yet I was accepted, and it was easy. Just play your part. What I learned at Art Centers, even though you're not a life photographer, walk like one with confidence. And that's what I did.
So nobody questioned you? Nobody said, where's your press pass, or,
And then later on, in my career, I crashed other premieres where you had to have credentials. And I forged the credentials. I would forge them and get accepted that way.
Well, that's great.
The two biggest events was the Night of 100 Stars at the Rockefeller, at the RCA Music Hall, Night of 100 Stars, and the party was at the New York Hilton, and I forged credentials, and I got in. That's a tremendous event.
So who was at that?
Oh, everybody. There was Cher, Elizabeth Taylor, Robert De Niro, with Al Pacino. I got them together. I got Grace Kelly,
Wow.
Brooke Shields. Everybody was there. It was just 100 stars. It's unbelievable. And I crashed both of them. They had two of them at different dates, of course.
What year was that?
I think it was the 80s, the 1980s.
Okay.
I can't recall the exact date at this moment, but it was in the 80s.
So have you worked freelance your entire life?
Yes. And that's what a paparazzo is. A paparazzo is a freelance photographer who actually creates photo opportunities that not just rely on events. He creates photo opportunities to get more valuable, more exclusive pictures that would sell to the markets. And that's what paparazzi is all about, getting those original pictures.
So you go out, you take all the pictures. Then once you've got the pictures, then you've got to shop them around to the tabloids. Yes. And
I sort of was a marathon man. I would shoot the events at night, go home, develop the film, hang it up, and then in the morning make contacts, and I would go out 9 o'clock in the morning to the markets. And the markets at that time in the 60s and 70s was the movie magazines and TV magazines like Photoplay, Modern Screen. And there was about at least 15 of those magazines crying for pictures. And I would sell them right off the contacts. They would put PP on a frame, the Photoplay. Then I would make the pictures the next day, prints in my darkroom, and deliver them.
How much were they paying for pictures back then? I'm just curious. Like who would have been, let's say in the 60s, who would have been the top price if you got pictures of that person?
Well, Jackie was
Jackie.
top price.
Okay.
Elizabeth Taylor, Doris Day, even many other stars. And they paid very little. The fan magazines only paid $25 a picture for a black and white. But if you had a cover color, $1,000. The same with the Inquirer. The Inquirer didn't have color in those days, and it was $1,000 for a cover, a black and white. Those were their key markets, the fan magazines and the National Enquirer. Later on, in the mid-70s, 1975, People magazine came out, and that did away with the fan magazines, because the fan magazines were monthly and People magazine was a weekly. So the fan magazines folded. They couldn't compete.
How were you able to just continue with this forever and ever, it seems? Did you do anything else? Did you ever work for a company as a photographer, or did you?
Well, I worked for Time Life in the black and white lab for 1 year. And I learned more about black and white printing. I was a very good printer. Even at Art Center, I learned good, but at Fine Life, I learned techniques that I didn't know, and that made me a very good printer. And that's how I sold. In other words, I would after the make the contact sheets, I would pick the best pictures that sold, of course, and make at least 15 of those pictures, 8x10s, and then deliver them. I would smear them through all the great markets, Time, Newsweek, not just the fan magazines and the Inquirer, but I smeared it all over, and that's how I earned a living. My pictures sold themselves. I don't have to tell the editors, I got this picture or that, unless you got an exclusive. If you want to sell an exclusive, you usually get double the rates. But I don't like that usually, because I rather smear it around and get more published, and I make more money actually that way. Because if you sell it exclusive, you make double the amount of going rate, but they hold it for a month. You can't sell them elsewhere until they come out with the. So it was a losing deal with that way. It's best to smear around with the markets.
I'm looking at all the covers of your 20 books here, and I've noticed that you've got 2 books dedicated to Jackie Kennedy Onassis.
Yes. My first book was Jacqueline, and I autographed a copy for Jackie, and I gave it to the doorman, and she got it. And before she died, there was a delivery man who told me that he saw my picture, my book, Jacqueline, on her library shelf. She didn't throw it away. She kept it. In fact, the 2 trials I had with Jackie, 1972, the first trial, 26-day trial, which I lost, and the second trial in 1981, which I lost also. And all these pictures from both trials, she kept. She took them, and she gave it to the JFK Library in Boston.
So it says on your bio that you were sued by her.
Yes. Well, actually, the first trial, I sued her. I was the plaintiff.
Oh. Because
what happened is in September 1924, September 1964, I got pictures of her on a bike and John on a bike coming down the pedestrian path across from her apartment, Central Park. And then she ordered the agent, John Connolly, smash his camera. But he didn't. He stopped me from photographing her. And the reason was that I photographed John on a bike. She wanted the film, and she ordered 2 other agents, John Walsh and James Califatis, to get the film from me. And I ran to my car, but they caught up to me, and they wanted the film, and I didn't surrender. I said no. And they took me to the police station in New York and gave me a summons for harassment. And I countersued. I said I was the one who was harassed because they kept me in the car for a half hour. And I thought they were going to get the film out of my car and tow it away and all that. And anyway, the judge said, he dismissed the case and said no one was being harassed, that it was, I'm a celebrity photographer and she's a celebrity, and there was nothing wrong. So the case was dismissed and in my favor. And my lawyer said you could bill her for his fee, which was $450. And I billed her, but she never responded, never paid it or responded. So that started the legal action. I was being harassed continually, agents blocking me and shooting events and whatever, non-events, whatever. And so I sued her for interfering with my profession. And of course I lost the case, and she countersued that I was invading her privacy and harassing her, but it's not true. The reason she wanted that film was because John Jr. was in the picture, and she didn't want publicity for her children. But if she was alone, she was never any trouble. In fact, the only time she blocked her face was one time when she came back from PPAC, and it was on Mother's Day, and John Jr. gave her a bouquet of flowers for Mother's Day. and she held the bouquet in front of her face. It's in the book. And that's the only picture that she blocked her face from me.
She was very protective of her children, I've read.
Yes, that's true. That's the reason that this whole lawsuits were about.
What is the law about that? If somebody is out in public and you photograph them and they don't want you to photograph them, is it do they have any legal recourse on that, or is it just too bad? You're out in public, I took your picture.
Yeah. Whenever celebrities are in the public areas, they're fair game legally. You could photograph them. You cannot photograph them in their house unless you're invited, of course. That's private. But once they're in public, they're fair game. And Jackie was fair game, and I always photographed her in public areas.
Okay. All right. The other one I wanted to ask you about was Marlon Brando. Says that you got punched in the jaw by Marlon Brando, and I'm looking at this picture of you with a football helmet.
Yeah.
I suppose that was pretty par for course to wear a football helmet for protection against some of these people.
He actually was in January, I think it was January 12th, 1973. He was taping a show with Dick Cavett. It was in the paper, and usually they tape the show about 5 o'clock. But I went early, and I found out he was coming in on a helicopter, and I went and I got him coming on in the Pan Am heliport on the East River, and I got pictures there. And then I ran to the studio at 58th Street, Dick Cavett studio, and it was impossible to get good pictures because there was just people, fans and photographers in the sidewalk. So I waited for them to come out, and I followed them to Chinatown, both Dick Cavett and Brando. And they knew I was following him. And Dick Cavett knows me, and he said, that's Galella following us. He's the one who went after Jackie with the trial. And so Brando says, which one is him? And he said, it's a tall one. Because I had a friend of mine, Paul Smallback, who was a photographer that I was teaching, and he was a fan, more or less. And he gave me information. That's why he was a good friend. Anyway, when they come out of their limousine, and I photographed them, about 10 shots. And then Brando stopped. They were going to go to dinner at a restaurant. And Brando called me over. He says, what else do you want that you already have? And I looked at Cav, and I said, well, how about a picture without the sunglasses, because it was nighttime and I had dark sunglasses, both of them. And before I know it, he had a sucker punch, and he knocked 5 teeth in my lower jaw, and blood was gushing out of my mouth. And I put my handkerchief, and I drove to Bellevue to get stitched up, and that was it. And Paul Smallback missed the picture. But then a year later, well, let me finish the story there. He almost bled to death with my teeth embedded in 5 knuckles. He went to his hotel at the Regency, had the doctor bandage him up, and the next morning, Dick Cavett picked him up and took him to the New York Hospital Special Surgery. For 3 days he was there because of this damage I did to his knuckles. So it was paparazzi germs. So then what happened is, I sued him, and I won an out-of-court settlement of $40,000. It paid for my teeth. $27,000 was my fee, which cost all my caps. I had to do it 3 times, and it worked out. So a year later, he had a press conference at the Waldorf promoting the Indians, and I came prepared with his football helmet. And I had Paul Smallback with me. I said, you got to take a picture of me with Brando. And I had to shove him to get this picture. He got the picture of me with Brando. And Random People magazine, double page. And I bought the negative from him. And that's one of my favorite publicity pictures.
It's funny you mentioned that one, because I watched that episode, and I think they mention you during the interview.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that not too long ago. It's on YouTube, And
Oh.
they were talking about walking around in Chinatown, and I swear they mentioned you by name during the interview.
Like, yeah, Dick Cavett was very friendly. He knew me.
Yeah.
And after, there was never any problem with Dick Cavett.
Oh, that's amazing.
I found out why did Brando sock me? Why? At that time, I thought it was because the Indians didn't go good on the show. The taping was not too good. But I found out in researching for my great book, Jackie, My Obsession, I found out that Brando did a book, an autobiographical book, and in his manuscript, he said he had an affair with Jackie at the Carlisle Hotel in 1965. Well, Jackie was having her apartment renovated. So that, I believe, was the reason he socked me, because he was sympathetic to Jackie.
Well, okay, that could be. Yeah, I've never heard that. I never heard that.
That's the truth, I think.
Yeah.
Because what other reason why he would sock me other than Jackie told him that this is Galella who went to trial with Jackie, and I think he was sympathetic to her, and that's it. But when he sucked me, he didn't show any anger, not even a mumble, just a sucker punch. I'm looking at Cavett, and that's how it happened.
Did you ever run into him again after the football?
Yes. He was at the Pierre Hotel, and I covered the garage, and other paparazzi were covering the front on 62nd Street of the Pierre Hotel. And he came out the front, and I ran from the garage to the Madison Avenue, and he says, "What are you running for?" And he posed. And he posed with me. I shook his hand. The photographers got pictures of him. And we made a deal. We said, "We won't follow you if you give us pictures now, pose." And he agreed. And that's how I got pictures of him shaking hands. Other photographers got the pictures of me shaking hands, which I have in the book too. And we didn't follow him. That's how it ended. So he was friendly at that time. And ever since then, other times he was not, he was always friendly from then on. But he was rare to get. He was a very exclusive, a reclusive celebrity, always living mostly in Tahiti or whatever. He had an island there.
You've got a book also here of Michael Jackson.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. Is that the entire book is just Michael Jackson photos?
Well, him with other celebrities. Like, for instance, I followed him, and he went to a hotel in L.A., and he was with Brooke Shields. And Brooke Shields introduced me to him. He said, "This is Ron Galella." And he says, "Oh, I heard of you." And he shook my hand. That was the first meeting of Michael Jackson. But he was always friendly to me. He permitted me to photograph him at the New York Hilton when he was there. And he was very nice to me. And he, in my book, shows from the beginning when he was black to when he was white at the end of the book.
Yeah, it was almost like you were photographing four different people through the transition, yeah? Yeah, he was a man. I believe he died because he was too frail and weak to do that last concert. And I think he almost wanted to die. I think that's my belief, because he was weak and he couldn't do it. He was underweight, and he figured he would be better off dead. The family would get more money that way, and that's what happened. He died, and the family got more money that way. Well, he had a very an interesting life. He was a rather strange individual, but
was he had Neverland in California. He had a wedding with Elizabeth Taylor there, and photographers in the helicopter were shooting him. Not me. I never shot from the helicopter like that.
You've also got a lot of. I just want to touch quickly on a couple of the musicians, since we mentioned Michael Jackson. I see a picture here of Mick Jagger with Jerry Hall. You also did the disco years, presumably at Studio 54, right?
Yeah. Mick Jagger was always friendly to me.
Was he?
And I photographed him following him to his apartment in Central Park West. And he had no bodyguards, nobody. I just went up to him and I got him all going to into opening his door to his apartment. He says, "Oh, Ron, I have bodyguards with guns, but they weren't there." Thank God. But he was very friendly, and once he said to me, he had an interview with Robinson, the interviewer for Rolling Stone, and she asked him, how do you deal with the press? And he says, well, when I'm in New York, I have to watch out for Ron Galella. That's what he said.
Oh. How was Studio 54? How did you...
There's one more thing about... I want to explain this. Besides, my greatest picture is Jackie, Windblown Jackie. Second to that is Mick Jagger with John Lennon. And I got that picture at the AFI in Century Plaza Hotel. And again, I crashed through the kitchen. I dressed up good with a tuxedo, and I managed to get... And that was the greatest event, was with James Cagney was honored at the AFI Century Plaza. And everybody was there. I mean, Frank Sinatra, of course, Mick Jagger was there with John Lennon. And that's how I got this great picture of them together. And that sold second to the Windblown Jackie. And other celebrities were there. Steve McQueen was there with Ali McGraw, Paul Newman with his wife, Joanne. It was the greatest event of all of them. And I always crashed, and I got the dinner too. Everything was great. And George Stevens, who was the producer of this show, said to me, I knew you were crashing, but I let you go because I know your pictures always sold. I got pictures of them, even Betty Davis, when she was on us, always get them published in the Newsweek or Time or whatever.
So tell me just a little bit about Studio 54, and then we're going to hit on your new book. What was it? Was it really as crazy and decadent as it was supposed to be? It was made out to be?
Yes, I think it was. I got two pictures in my book, the Shooting Stars, my book about Studio 54. It was, to me, it was the greatest disco ever, and it was like a movie set with the great lights and music, loud, and everybody was like a star dancing there. They became somebody. And it was a great event. I always checked it before I went home. I lived in the Bronx or in Yonkers. And on the way home, before I went home, I always checked for Studio 54. And it was a place that stars met other stars. Like the usual ones were Warhol with Calvin Klein and Elizabeth Taylor sometimes, and they were usually there, and they always meet other stars. And Steve Rebell was very clever. He invited all the celebrities in town that were doing their gigs. He invited them over to have drugs and etc. at the studio. He was clever that way.
So how was Steve Rebell? Did you get along with him?
No.
No.
So two things happened with him. The first one was I shot a picture of Ali McGraw dancing with a producer at this, and she had no bra and her breast showed in one of the shots, and it was published in Playboy magazine. And he said that Ali McGraw didn't like this picture, and he barred me from the studio for at least a month. And it's not true, because I know Ali McGraw. I gave her pictures in the past, and she wrote to me that she didn't mind having that picture published. And I got another picture of her with her breast not showing in People magazine the same week. So the second time was more drastic. The second time that he barred me from the studio was a Baltimore crew, TV from Baltimore. They interviewed me at Yonkers, my house. And after that, they said, we want to get you on location shooting. And I said, oh, let's go to the Copacabana. Robin Williams is performing there. So we went down, and I got pictures of Robin Williams. And then Steve Abell was there, and he invited the crew and me, and of course Robin Williams, to the studio. And the Steve Abell came to the TV crew and says, Robin Williams does not want any TV pictures shot, but it's okay for me shooting stills. So what happened is I was shooting stills, and the TV crew shot me shooting the stills of Robin Williams dancing. And right away, Steve Abell came and he demanded the film. The TV crew did not give him the film, and he ordered a big bodyguard. And I got this picture of the bodyguard with him, and I knew there was going to be trouble. And I was gonna leave after I got the picture. And Steve Abell says, "You're barred again from the studio," as I left. And I heard all kinds of noise banging around. There was a fight, and Steve Abell had the bodyguards break the camera, destroy the film, and they came out. They were all arrested, but the TV crew was released immediately at the police precinct nearby. And Steve Abell was held in the jail at the precinct for 33 hours. And he blamed me for that 33 hours. But the reason they kept him, it was not for this incident. He was kept because of unpaid violations with the studio. So he didn't pay. That's the reason they held. But he held this against me. Like, I got invitations always to go to events there. Like, one event was Save the Elephants when Peter Beard had. And Peter Beard says, I want Galella in. And he's trying to persuade Steve to get me in. He says, no, I suffered too much in jail. So it kept me out. So I think that was unfair. I call him in the disco book, I call him a Pinocchio. He's a liar.
So do you have a best and a worst? Like, I think Jackie was probably one of your favorites, right?
Yeah, she was number one.
She was number one.
Elizabeth Taylor was second.
Okay.
In fact, I have a bigger file on Elizabeth Taylor than Jackie, because Elizabeth Taylor was at events more than Jackie.
Was there anybody that you really disliked taking pictures of?
Yes. I have a chapter in the book, The Bad Boys, they call it. And Sean Penn was one of them.
Oh.
And he was bad.
He was notorious, yeah.
Yeah.
So the new book is called Shooting Stars. Now tell us a little bit about this one. How is this different from your other books?
Well, it's Shooting Stars, untold stories. These are stories that people don't know about. My childhood, how I was a bad boy myself. I did things that were unbelievable, like BB guns, shooting people with BB guns, and shooting at each other, my brothers, and etc., and other things. Childhood that I had, and there was 12 chapters, and one of the chapters is 22 techniques on how to be a good photographer, no matter what kind of camera you have. And those are techniques that I have. Like, so for instance, one of the techniques is you have to have a car to be a paparazzo, because you have to follow the stars to where they go, and you can't rely on taxis, because a taxi will not pass lights, and you'll lose the star in their limousine, whatever. And the chapter I want to light on, the bad boy chapter, the worst was worse than Sean Penn was Richard Burton. He was the worst, because I was shooting him in Cuernavaca, Mexico, when he was doing a film called Hammersmith is Out. And I was there shooting over a week. And Elizabeth Taylor also was in the film. And then I went to the hotel where they were going to film a scene at a swimming pool. And the owner invited me. He says, where do you want to hide to get the pictures? And I hid in a cave adjacent to the pool. And I was shooting. The party started about 5 o'clock. And then one of the crew came into the cave where the pool pump was, to turn off the pump because of the noise. And he discovered me, and he brought me, and they took all the film from me, not just what I photographed, what I took that time, but even the good film. And they went to my hotel and took the 15 rolls of the whole week of shooting of over 500 pictures, brought them to the set. And I went to the set, and Peter Ustinov was the director. And I said, I want the film. And I couldn't get a hold of him. And instead of the Peter Ustinov coming out, 3 bodyguards come out, and they worked me over. They hit me, they broke a tooth, they gave me a black eye, they kicked me in the back, and the security was just watching, the police security. And I said, I want to arrest this man. They stopped, and they threw me in jail for 45 minutes with one of the crew. And then released me, and I went back to the set. This was a nightmare. Oh, I had no sleep. I went back to the set to get the film, and it was all exposed, pulled out of the cartridges on the surface of the patio. And I took the film, and I sued them and the crew, and I lost again because the proprietor didn't want to testify. So, but there was an agreement that if I sign an agreement, or a general release, I should say, that I would get $1,500, and stating that Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor had nothing to do with it. But I did not sign it. I said they had everything to do with it, because Richard Burton didn't like me because I followed him, and I'm sure they were drunk on the set because they had liquor there. And I lost that case, and that was that. And then later on, he divorced Elizabeth Taylor, and Richard Burton's bodyguard, or driver, I should say, and bodyguard, he called me in New York from the Lombardi Hotel and says, Richard Burton is inviting me to photograph him and his new wife, Sally Hay, wedding pictures. I said, okay. And he felt guilty, and he gave me an opportunity to get good pictures, which I gave him too, and I sold those around the world. So I think he felt guilty, and that's the reason why he did that.
Well, that's an amazing story.
That's the worst. That's the worst thing, worse than Sean Penn or anybody else, because of my film destroyed. Over 500 pictures of my art destroyed.
I got to ask you, how do you like digital photography versus film?
Well, digital has advantages and speed. You get quick. You could see the picture right in your camera that you got it. That's the advantage. But I prefer film, because film has texture of the skin. I love the grain, where digital has that pixels. I don't like that.
Ron, we got to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on. The book is called Shooting Stars. Is it out now? It's been released, yeah?
Well, it's coming out. It's coming out by the end of this month.
So
Did I say a quote from Jackie? I don't know if I said this. If you produce one book, you will have done something wonderful in your life. That's what Jackie said that when she was a publisher in New York. And I have 20 books. This is my 20th book, Shooting Stars, Paparazzo Extraordinaire, Untold Stories.
And please check it out when it comes out at the end of the year. It'll be available at Amazon, I assume.
Right. Amazon has, or you could buy them directly from me at rongalella@gmail.com.
rongalella@gmail.com. All right.
Over 400 photographs, 168 pages. Great book.
Are you going to be doing any more? Are you still working?
Oh, yes, I still work. I shoot one event, and that's the annual Met Gala event at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And it's the only event I cover, and they give me a good spot. They give me a spot next to E.T., where not only I get fashion, I get celebrities being interviewed, and gives me good candid shots that are more unposed. Awesome. And that's what I love. I love unposed pictures. And that's going to be my next book. Next year, my book will be on the Met Galas. I covered them from the mid-'70s until now. And in the mid-'70s, I was invited inside, where it was easy to get in, and the opportunities were greater. You had 4 takes, people going in the gallery, coming out of the gallery, going to dinner, coming out of the dinner. But now there's only 1 take going in, and it's outside on the steps.
Ron, thanks so much for coming on and telling your stories. The stories were incredible. I really enjoyed listening to them. And best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you for having me.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
He was leaving on a jet plane 'cause he couldn't find his own brain. He was making the pirate's head go round. We were looking for a long time. Now that he's gone, I found mine. And what I found, I just can't say. Stop, there's something in my mind. Stop, it's way ahead of time. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination now. Time is precious, where you're standing. Your eyes are most commanding, but your mind is about to break down. There's a vision, I can see there, some sort of magic up in the air. I wonder, should I fly away? Stop, I know you're not too far. Stop, please tell me where you are. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination now. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination now. My destination now. It's way ahead of time. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination now. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination. Gotta make my destination now. My destination is here. I tried so hard to get there. Gotta make my destination now. This dedication of mine is getting stronger
in the air, clears my ears and pulls my hair. Crisp the ground beneath my feet. The moon's up in the sky, I say goodnight, she don't reply. She's got places she needs to be. I am safely back home, I am warm beneath my sheets. I am tucked away secure, ghosts and ghouls can't get my feet. I am fighting all the fears and the phantasms in my mind. I am great, I am good, I'm alright, yeah, I'm just fine. Don't sleep all through the night, dawning sunlight is so bright. Paints the walls of my room gold. Let it soak into my skin, let the joyfulness soul in. And through the day let it leak out my soul. I am safely back home, I am warm beneath my sheets. I am tucked away secure, ghosts and ghouls can't get my feet. I am fighting all the fears and the phantasms in my mind. I am great, I am good, I'm alright, yeah, I'm just fine. Wouldn't it be so lovely just to fall asleep, put my head down, drift away. But I just toss and turn, think about deeds, think about words. Shake my head in my foolish way. Oh, I am safely back home, I am warm beneath my sheets. I am tucked away secure, ghosts and ghouls can't get my feet. I am fighting all the fears and the phantasms in my mind. I am great, I am good, I'm alright, yeah, I'm just fine. I am safely back home, I'm alright, yeah, I'm just fine. I am tucked away secure, I'm alright, yeah, I'm just fine. I am fighting all the fears and the I'm alright, yeah, I'm just fine. I am great, I am good, I'm alright, yeah, I'm just fine.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my very special guest, Ron Galella. Thank you, Ron, for coming on the show. And also thank you to Kyoto, Kandy, Lakotah, and Crosshair Kid. This is Douglas Coleman saying I'll see ya when I see ya.
To the mile, you've got to run, not walk. To give a sermon, you've got to preach.